Welcome all to the Mahinga Kai Education and Sustainability webinar. Nō reira, me kara kia tātou. Mauri ora kia mātou. Arahina mātou ia mātou mahi. Ke mihia he huarahi mō te kaupapa o te mātou rangahangarau. Āwhina atu, āwhina mai. Te pou e here nei ia mātou. Hui e, tā ki e. I am delighted to welcome Tepora to today's webinar. With over 20 years of experience teaching primary and intermediate schools, Tepora brings a deep passion for environmental education and edible gardening. Her master's research at the University of Auckland focused on the Garden to Table program, and she recently completed a PhD through Otago University's Centre for Sustainability, while based in Auckland. Tepora currently teaches 2 days a week at Whareorino School in Waikawa, where she leads environmental education initiatives and supports the school's involvement in the Garden to Table program. Let's hand over to Tepora as she takes us through how Mahinga Kai in Kura can inspire sustainable practices and thinking in our community. And we'll just reshare slideshow. And whoops. There we go. We'll get there, Tepora.
That's all right. Kia ora. Thank you, Ruth. My kōrero today is called Mahinga Kai, which is, some people know it as a marakai, but traditionally up north in Ngāpuhi, we call it a Mahinga Kai, a food garden, and it's how it relates to education and sustainability. Thanks, Ruth. And I will start off today situating myself in my research that I did. Ko tēnei take pepeha poto ki te taha o te mama, ko whakatere tuku maunga, ko waima tuku awa, ko te moana hokianga o kupe tuku moana. Ko nā toki mata whaorua tuku waka, ko tūhurangi tuku marae, ko te mahuri tuku hapu, ko Ngāpuhi tuku iwi. Ko eruera tākehi toia rawa ko uwhinga paki wihongi toia o ku tupuna. Ko Stanley Davies rawa ko Eriana Waihoki toia o ku mātua tupuna. Ko Tepora ahau. In this picture here, you see on the left, my great-grandfather, James John Leviticus, a German Jew who jumped ship in the Hokianga, oh gosh, over a century ago now. And the photo next, he is my paternal great-grandfather. The three women are my paternal great-grandmother, Pehirangi, her daughter, my grandmother, Te Uwhinga Paki Wihongi Toia, and her daughter, my mother, Eriana Waihoki Toia, and down in the bottom corner, my father, Stanley Davies, and my mum, Eriana. Thank you, Ruth. So that forms part of my background story in that working with Mahinga Kai, the Maramataka, I spent much of my childhood living with my maternal grandmother up in the Kaikohe area, going to marae with her, and did not come back to Auckland until I had to go to school. So I was a bit disgruntled about that. Becoming involved with education and technology, I spent several years working in the Howick Historical Village as a historical interpreter and role player, and working with the gardens there, where it was crucial for us to only source produce that came over a century ago. And then when I went to Auckland College of Education, and I worked in the environmental education field as it was starting up, and my two guiding lights were Robin Irvine, who unfortunately we have lost now, but Robin was my geography teacher at Papatoe High School, and Isabel Brown, who we unfortunately lost last year from the social studies department. And they really, really helped me get to grips with how I could promote environmental education through my teaching. And my childhood gardens also were a great influencer in my background. Thank you, Ruth. This is my inspiration, Stanley Davies, my dad. And his dad in his garden, he taught me to garden. And he taught me to garden well. We never purchased vegetables. We just didn't. We grew everything. And that's Dad on the right-hand side, the last photo I have of him in his garden at the age of 89, and lost Dad about 3 years ago. Thank you, Ruth. With my teaching experience, I had a varied life, worked in the historical village, and I didn't actually go to Teachers College and graduate with my bachelor's degree until I turned 40. And then I worked in Howick Intermediate for several years and dug up all the grounds surrounding our school swimming pool in order to put vegetable gardens in. And then from there, I was offered a contract working in the UK for 2 years. So I went and worked over there and was absolutely horrified by the lack of environmental awareness and action in the colleges that I worked in. I worked in two over a couple of years. So when I came home to New Zealand, I went back to where I had grown up, which was Otara, and went to a small primary school in Otara and spent 8 years there working with environmental education and the Garden to Table program. And I'm currently in Whareorino. I just arrived about 2 hours ago. It's about a 5-hour drive for me in my camper van, Nirvana, and arrived down here, and I sleep outside the school gate in my camper van, and specifically was employed to work with the Garden to Table program, which the school has just joined, and work with Enviro schools, and I'm loving it. My master's, as Ruth said in her introduction, was about expanding the classroom walls, because I believe the majority of everything that we do in the vegetable gardens covers every single curriculum area. My children may get stuck having to tell you the area of a box on a piece of paper. But as I said to the Euro inspectors, and this was the reason I did my master's, because they took me to task over how much time we spent outside, and said, what role does this have in the school? So next time they came, I threw a copy of the master's on the table and said, there you go, there's your answer. But first of all, I took my children outside and I said to them, okay, guys, I need to get soil. What do we need for that garden? They worked out the cubic volume of soil that we needed in order for a garden. It's practical, real life learning, and you can't go past that. So for my doctorate, I went back home to my tūranga waiwai. Oh, no questions. I went back home to my tūranga waiwai, which was up in the Hokianga, Waima, Kaikohe, and I interviewed both the tumuaki, or the principals of the schools, and also the kaumātua and kuia in our marae, to look at how we can reintegrate again the learnings from our tupuna, from our ancestors, and use that to enhance both the cultural and educational learnings in our schools. Thank you, Ruth. Every time I thank Ruth, it's because my computer today won't let me join Zoom, so she's running the PowerPoint for me. We had an opportunity in 2017 at my wee primary school in Otara to go to the New Zealand Flower and Garden Show, to enter what they called the Upcycle Garden Challenge, which my students knew as recycling, which we already did at school. Thanks, Ruth. This is what the advertisement said. We Kiwis are an ingenious bunch when it comes to creating something new out of not a lot. I really hate people who just read off a PowerPoint, but hopefully it just sums it up. This year we're celebrating the Kiwi can-do attitude with our Upcycled Garden Challenge. We want you to create a small, colourful garden from upcycled objects with edible plants and colourful resin paint and or wood stain colours. Upcycled objects, well, you could use anything. Wooden pallets, metal baths, bed heads, and anything that you could create a planter out of. So get the creative juices flowing, and as we all know, one man's trash really is another man's treasure. We were the only primary school that entered this section. Thanks, Ruth. So in our entry, this was the information we had to give them. We called it Te Kare Ana Tamariki, the children's garden. We created our own environmental vision. We did a lot of work already. We were the first school to ever get the plastic recycling container in our school. We always went riparian planting down the local stream. We did water testing. We did all the beach cleanups. We were constant. And our children understood that if we don't look after Papatūānuku, then the future for humans is dire. So the children were very much involved in this garden. Thanks, Ruth. We were given the specs, and this also is where measurement comes out. And I will explain, I did this garden with the junior children, the new entrants, the years 1 and 2 and 3 helped in this garden. Using metre squares of newspaper all sellotaped together, we were able to work out how much space we had in a 2.4 metre area. And if you look in the diagram, you can see there that to the left, the right, and the rear of our garden would be another 3 gardens. We just had the plywood base, up to us what we did with it. And so I was fortunate in being given a science room where I was able to provide CRT for the whole school. And I would do science and environmental education in my classroom. So the entire school came through my classroom every single week. So we were able to spend time working on this. Thank you, Ruth. With the children, we looked at ideas. We got magazines. We printed pictures from internet searches and Google searches. The teacher aides and the teachers from all these children got so excited about it. And one group of children, they were, fire, fire, look at this, somebody's growing food in a chest of drawers. So here we go. Facebook Marketplace, for anyone who's wondering about costs of things, I got the chest of drawers on the right-hand side for $40. Thank you, Ruth. On the left-hand side here, this was another idea because the same person selling the chest of drawers was selling a bed. So the kids said, can we get it? We can do something with it. And I said, oh, well, I'll go pick it up and we'll bring it. I'm not sure if it'll be any good, but we'll do it. On the right-hand side of this picture, you can see tins used for planting things. And the children thought that was a great idea. Thank you, Ruth. In here, you can see what we decided to do. You can see this is the same chest of drawers, the brown chest of drawers, and all the painting was done at school outside my science room, and the children did all of the painting. They did all the white painting, and then we had, let's see, about 3 children for each drawer were able to get their hands covered in paint and make their handprints on the drawers. And there's another drawer at the bottom, so there were more hands there as well, which was really good. You can see we took the idea that the children found of the tins, and these are actually formula tins from baby formula. So it's the sort of thing we didn't have to pay any money for that. We just sent a call out to the parents. If you've got any baby formula tins, can we have them, please? And the children wanted bright rainbow colours. And it's a really good idea to make sure that the people who are helping you, that we clarify our ideas with them as well, because we'd painted 3/4 of the wall before somebody pointed out we had our rainbow upside down. So we then started painting again, got that finished and did some clouds and blue sky. And so we were still planting our flowers in that part there. And you can see the bed. We've done the bed all colourful and covered it in weed matting so that would hold the soil. So far, weed matting we already had, because we had 30 organic gardens at school. So we already had a lot of weed matting. The organisers of the New Zealand Flower and Garden Show donated soil. So that was really great as well. Thanks, Ruth. And here we are with planting going on and getting it sorted out with all our containers. To the left-hand side of the bed, you can see buckets that have got a whole pile of vegetables growing in them. These buckets were all grown at school. We started growing our vegetables about 3 months before the start date of the competition. And I'll explain more about those buckets a little bit later. And this is one of our teacher aides helping us. You'll also notice that hanging down from the beam in front of the rainbow, we've recycled a tyre. So the top of the tyre was cut away so that we could fill the base with soil. It's also got the rainbow colours the children wanted. And we're just gradually filling everything up with all of the plants that we had and the vegetables that we had. It was fun. Thanks, Ruth. While we were at school, this is one of the things we did outside my classroom. And this is why I say it doesn't have to cost the earth to do this. I was at the dentist's one day. But I was there far too early, so I was waiting in my car, and outside the dentist's, there was an arborist, and he was chopping down a tree. So I went to him and I said, "Hi, excuse me, is there any chance we could take some of your trimmings of the tree, because I can use them at school with the children?" "Not a problem, love." So he sliced them up for me and put them in the boot of my car, which was great. And then the senior children painted these up the next day, and you can see the difference in sizes. We've got small tic-tac-toe games, we've got larger tic-tac-toe games, and they also painted up their sets of rocks as bugs, their tic-tac-toe bugs, in order to use that. Thank you, Ruth. And I was showing you that because if you look on top of the chest of drawers, just in front of the rainbow tins, you can see the large tic-tac-toe board there. And that was what our garden finally looked like when we finished. And thank you, Ruth. What I'd like you to notice here is at the foot of the bed, it wasn't there before, but you can see a lovely silver board joined to the base of the bed, to the foot of the bed. And that was a silver medal that we won from the New Zealand Flower and Garden Show. Are there any questions from anybody at this stage? I'm quite happy for questions. Any comments anyone wants to make or anything they want to ask?
There are no questions that have come through the Q&A function yet, but I'm pretty sure that there will be lots when we get to our Q&A.
Okay, thank you. Financially, at the end of the flower and garden show, we were able to sell everything off. I had someone who was desperate the entire show to buy the bed base and to buy the chest of drawers. And she wanted us to throw the flowers in for free, but we said, no, the children did so much work. We need to buy some more money to replace things like this at school. We ended up selling absolutely everything from the show, and it was quite profitable. Very good. Okay, thank you, Ruth. However, our upcycled garden was not our main entry, so we were really thrilled to get a silver. That was because our juniors wanted to be involved. For the seniors in our school, we also had the opportunity to put an entry in the garden to table section of the show. Thank you, Ruth. So this is slightly more complicated. The school garden's design criteria, it didn't actually look 2 rows of 4 like they've set out there. They ended up doing one long row of 8 school gardens. But the main thing they were showing us was what looks like the house frontage. That was the backdrop that we had for our school, and we could decorate that for our school garden, and we could decorate that any way that we wanted to. So, yep, that's good. Thank you. Our design space, 4.2 metres by 4.2, with a raised border around the edge of it. So this provoked a lot of work from the seniors. Is an amazing thing how many arguments they can have about whether or not something equals 4.2 metres by 4.2 metres and where they start. And so we positioned this space immediately outside the front wall of my classroom. And they measured it out. They put wooden pegs into the ground the same way that a builder does. And then they were trying to make sure it was square. So we were using set squares and things to make sure they had the angles correct. Bit difficult because I had a tree right outside my window, but we managed to get it done to give them an idea of what was happening. Right. Thank you, Ruth. So this was our entry for this one, Dawson Primary School. And we called it Kari ki te tepu, garden to table, because I was raised by a nanny who refused to speak English to me. So Te Reo formed a major component of my work in my classrooms. Our children were really passionate about participating in edible garden programs, the Gardens Table program, planting seeds, growing veggies, herbs and fruit, and also in cooking. I used to run a master chef competition every year as well. And the main criteria was that it was food from our gardens. So this was our description, but there was an awful lot of planning that went into this, particularly because I literally wanted it to be the students' work. Thanks, Ruth. So we had a school-wide involvement. The juniors were working on their little gardens, but in my science, enviro and CRT room, I had meetings. I had a team of eco warriors who were really on board with this. I had interested teachers and teacher aides. So what I did in my science room, I had planning meetings and regular workshops. And you know what it's like with a town school, very different here in a wee country place where we've only got 4 children. But there would always be sports on at morning tea, or sports on at lunchtime. And there was so much information to go through that if I had a planning session at a morning tea on a Monday, I might do the same session again at lunchtime on Wednesday. And then I would do those sessions vice versa on the Tuesday and the Thursday, but with slightly different things. So it did take my time, because like everyone else, I had to juggle around my duty time and everything like that. So it does take time, but it's so worthwhile. Thanks, Ruth. What we did, and this is the draft we ended up with, but using sheets of paper on those planning meetings, we had discussions about how to draft a plan. And every single class was presented with a large A3 sheet of paper to make their ideas, just written ideas, they could draw pictures if they wanted, of what they would want to see in their ideal classroom. And I'm sure you can imagine we came up with over 600 different ideas. But it was amazing. And they could also put their ideas in as a team. So we took all these ideas and then we would bring them to the meetings for all those children who submitted them. And the students on the eco team and some of the teacher aides, they would look through and we'd go, oh, somebody wanted a kura path. We really like that. We want to do that. We need to have lots of vegetables and things. Games, you'll see some of the games shortly. Yeah, on this map here, this is what it finally came to look as when we took those ideas. Number 8 on the top left-hand side, you'll see the seedling house. It didn't end up going to the Flower and Garden Show. I'll explain why shortly. The nursery cot ended up over where the seedling house is on a bit of an angle. Down the bottom left-hand side, you'll see there's a blue section labelled number 4. We had our own wetlands developed at school. On part of the school field, there was a pond that was dug. We planted it as a wetland. And when I left, we had a thriving environment in there. We had fish, which no longer needed to be fed with fish food because they were fully sustainable with all the bugs and insects that were in the pond. We had frogs. We had so many things. Down at number 15, you'll see it says produce kitchen shelf unit. We made so many preserves because we had also planted an orchard many years previously. And the children used to make preserves from everything that we grew. And number 3, the waharoa. Thanks, Ruth. All the numbers that you saw on the diagram, the children understood that that draft design had to have explanations with it. So they learnt that you needed to make a key. So there was plenty of scope for children that might not want to physically get dirty in the garden, but wanted to do a lot of work on the computers and on the laptops, doing all the write-ups and everything like that. So there was a role for every child. Thank you, Ruth. This was our seedling house that we built, and these were recycled plastic bottles, as you can see, and we spent a long time in the classrooms, a few months prior to knowing about the competition, building our seedling house, and then moved it into our vegetable garden. Those are, on the right-hand side, recycled bread trays that go in there. So the seedlings, we'd plant our own seeds and we would push the seedlings on the trays into the seed house to let them develop. We'd open the doors on a fine day so they'd get fresh air and a breeze, but they were protected from any storms. And when we came to look at putting it on a trailer or on a friend's truck, we couldn't lift it. It was as heavy as a house. We literally could not lift it. So although that was an idea that all the children wanted, I said to them, if you guys can lift it, we'll find a way to make it work. And they spent, I think, all morning tea one day, and they came to me and they said, we decided we don't really need to put that in the show. So we did something else instead. Thanks, Ruth. Two other things that we had done at school, hopefully I've tried to cut every face out of these pictures. We made kerplunk. And what we did with kerplunk is that the groundsman had some spare mesh, the green mesh that he was going to throw away. And he learnt after about 7 or 8 years to check with me first. Hey, Fi, I reckon you can do something with this. I said, great, thank you. So he knocked up a little base on legs for us. We put a plastic drum in the bottom. We got a whole pile of bamboo on the bottom and then popped some coloured balls in. And the kids used to love playing kerplunk. We also recycled some wood from a building site, painted the ends, and made a Jenga set. There is a reason I'm showing you these. Thanks, Ruth. So looking in here, this is looking at our garden side on once we're at the garden show and we were assembling it. All the shades of blue, aqua and green stones on the right hand side were to represent our wetlands, and all the plants to the left of that were plants that we plant with our riparian planting and in our wetlands. By the time this was finished, we also had plywood birds, native water birds for New Zealand. Just to the left-hand side, you'll also see the kerplunk, because the children said this is their garden. That's what they play with outside the classrooms at school, so they wanted it in their garden. And you will see our buckets there. All of our vegetables were grown in buckets. Now, this particular system, we had incredibly lush vegetables. As I said, they'd been growing for at least 3 months. This is a self-watering bucket system. On the top of each resine bucket, you will see a colour which is of an ordinary household bucket. The household buckets slip into the top of the resine buckets nicely, but you do end up with a gap on the bottom. So when you have holes in the coloured bucket holding your vegetables, when you water your plants, you end up with a reservoir sitting in the base of the resine bucket, and you end up with a self-watering system. So our vegetables never dried out. The display was in November, and our vegetables were as magnificent the day it finished as the day that we took them there. Thank you, Ruth. These were two pictures. The one on the left, group of children came to me and they said, can we make something like this across the front of our garden? I said, wow, that looks fantastic. I'm no artist, but I said, that looks really great. Let's see what we can do. And then they said, and we want a whānau. We want a proper entrance gate to our garden. So this is this is a photo I took for anyone in the Waikato there. This is in the Green Cathedral in Huntly, at the entrance to the Green Cathedral from the inside of it. Thank you, Ruth. And this is what it looked like when we'd completed it. So our students, the fence palings, I got them, and every day there would be a group of students outside with their red and their black paints and their designs, constructing the fence palings in line with what they had discovered and what they wanted in their garden. Up the top, you'll see the whānau has been formed by placing 2 longer palings across there as an entranceway. I'm not sure if you can see it, but the door at the back was an old door lying around in the caretaker's building that he didn't want anymore, and we went through his numbers and we put a 15 on the door because number 15 was my classroom, the science and enviro room. And you can't see it too well from here, but against the back wall, which is all covered with weed matting, all the black is weed matting, but we do have some tukutuku panels of weaving just above the door. And to the left and the right, we have got picture frames with photographs inside them of children from school. And then you've got little plants growing up in front of them. On the right-hand side, where the children wanted their preserves, you can see the big stand. There's our school cookbook that we made. And we won the money for that by entering a Mother Earth cooking competition. So we got enough money to do that. And then there's our jars of preserves on there. To the left-hand side, if you go back to where the blue material finishes and the black wall starts, you'll see a child's cot that we had been donated. That was our seedling bed. So that's what we used instead of our seedling shed. And the pathway going through was the beginning of the kura spiral. It curves just in front of the door, goes all the way around and comes out to a full spiral exactly as the students had wanted. And there's our worm farm at the back between the door and the seedling bed, the cot. Thanks, Ruth. So just reminding you again, so this is what you saw. We managed to get the waharawa. The red and black lines in the front are our fence paling. Extra vegetables in the centre there, but all of the greenery was buckets of vegetables. That was so good. So the nursery cot got moved to where it says seedling house. And the blue circles, number 9, were our worm farms with bottles of worm tea on top. And we'll show you what it looks like. Thanks, Ruth. So here's our close-up of how that looks. This is from right up to the entrance of it. And we just used crushed shell for the pathway. And we used mulch all the way going around, which we were able to rebag up at the end of the show and take back to school and reuse. And yes, it's exhausting because it was over in Henderson and our school was based in Otara. I would arrive in Henderson about 6 a.m. in the morning just to go through the garden and check on everything. Just make sure the plants were okay, make sure everything was fine. And then I'd zip back to school. And then as school finished, we'd zip back again. And, oh, you can't see it in this photo. The next photo, please, Ruth. So the final view, and what I'd like you to notice on this one is if you go to the door, over the door to the right-hand side where one of the photo frames of the children is, you will see a big golden sign just above the children. And that was the gold medal that our garden won at the New Zealand Flower and Garden Show. Thanks, Ruth. Oh, yeah, I did. I couldn't remember if I had done a close-up. We were so excited, but the children were excited. They were interviewed on television. They loved it. And you can see a beautiful sign of our tukutuku panel there, and that panel was made by students. And the other thing I'd like to say is that we had 3 representative students of our seniors, of our year 6 students that went with me to the school for about to the garden show for 2 full days. So they got to go around, look around the other gardens, come back to our garden. But before the show opened for judging, they said, "We know ours is going to do well." And I said, "How do you know that?" And they said, "Because of the kaumatua." What we had done is we had invited an elderly kaumatua who came to our garden, who had a kōrero with the children about everything that they had done, and blessed our garden, did a karakia on our garden, so incorporating there our mātauranga, our knowledge, our learnings, our everything, our whanaungatanga, our building our relationships. And the children felt confident that their garden was the best it was because we had stayed true to our Māori tanga that we used at school. So that's just a personal perspective, but that's how they felt. So, and that's how I feel too. Thank you, Ruth. The reason for this: kura and kaumatua relish the opportunity to restore the values and tikanga from the past, incorporating the teachings of our tupuna, especially as they relate to mātauranga and the use of maramataka within gardening systems and programs. This is out of my doctoral research. One of the things in particular, one of the mātauranga learnings that I introduced to my children, and we do it at school here because our gardens are now growing beautifully, was the conservation of water. Many of our kuia, our old ladies, told us when they were children, they used to have like a tin cup each, and it was their job when they were watering or the mahinga kai, the huge garden, is they would cart their bucket along, but they would put 1 cup full of water at the base of the stem of each plant. So there was no wasting water that you didn't have spare. It conserved what you had, but the plant itself got the best of what you had. So I've just incorporated that into our teaching. Thank you, Ruth. I feel this relates, this is a model that I designed here, Pūnaha Kai Māori, a food system integrating kāinga and kura, because I believe that with no matter what we're doing, whether it's an edible garden, whether it's environmental learning, we need to integrate our kāinga or community with our schools. So you'll see here the main stem of the koru is the kāinga, and coming off all of that is the relationships, the runanga. Any learning workshops we go to are a runanga. The marae itself, the kaumatua. Obviously, we have to be aware of council or government policies, but if you're setting up an edible garden in a community or on a marae, you only need to be aware of them. They don't have control or ownership of it. Sponsors, we had amazing sponsors. I had a truck turn up with all these free buckets from Rosine to be the base of our bucket gardens. And I got that because I got on the phone and I rang them up and I said, "This is what we're doing. We're only using Rosine paints. Would you have any empty buckets?" I had a truck pull up, so I was thrilled with that. The mahinga kai, the gardens, the mātauranga, acknowledging all those learnings. It's not just from the past. It's the learnings from the past as well as the new learnings that we have and integrating them together. And then the kura, the school, has a crucial part within the community. For example, as a result of my research, I've got a couple of schools up north who are making bucket gardens to take to the pensioner flats. that sort of thing. Thank you, Ruth. If you want to learn how to make your own bucket garden, I'll bring my hand drill and come along to the TENS conference in September and come to a workshop and make your own bucket garden. It's a lot of fun. Thank you, Ruth. And those are my contact details if anybody wants to ask me anything or get in touch. Feel free to contact me, email me, whatever you like.
Tēnā rawa to Tepora. That was so inspiring and so much fun listening. You could tell I was engaging because I was sometimes preempting your thanks, Ruth, because is that the point? I want to hear more. We have a very quiet audience today. So far we've gotten a comment through from Candace saying, really love examples of low, no-cost gardening. And I responded back saying, me too. And I loved working in my daughter's school permaculture garden. I think that's actually one of the things I can blame on why I ended up going through teacher training was finding out how much fun it is spending time in a worm farm.
It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. We need to go through our worm farm this week. So I carry tarpaulins in the in the basement of my camper van. So we'll be putting an old tarpaulin out and tipping the worms out and separating. You just sort of pull away the soil from the edges because the worms will burrow into the center to keep away from the sunlight. So you're not hurting them till you've got this little bundle in the center and you can pop them back in the worm farm, bed them in again, bit of shredded paper and some food. And then we can use that because we've got seedlings. Well, we've got seeds that we want to pot up. So we'll get that going.
And I know I have a few questions and comments and kind of things I'd like to follow up on from the presentation. I mean, firstly, hats off to the amount of commitment that you were demonstrating, being able to get to Henderson at 6 a.m. and then zip back to Otara and backwards and forwards, especially with Auckland traffic. So I'm just wondering if you maybe have a little less time in your day or a little less ability to zip around Auckland. Are there any tips and strategies that you could share maybe with some of our kayako who want to be gardeners?
Start at home. Set it up at home. Do a small garden at home, even if it's in a bucket. You can have your own parsley. You can have your own spring onions. Oh, I've got a mountain of parsley. I've got 5 small raised gardens where I live in Auckland. I'm only in a studio. You can go from the front door to the back door. The classroom here is bigger than my little studio in Auckland, and but I put those 5 little raised garden beds down, and they were great. They were only about $50 each, which you don't buy them all at the one time, and you do everything that you want to in there. But I produced potatoes all summer long. We've been eating kumara out of one garden for the last month. I've got another garden where, and I must say here, because of my years of gardening, I don't always follow, there's no children here to hear me, all the planting guidelines. It must be this far apart or this far apart. With my lettuces, I'll creme plant them. And I've got a small garden just creme planted with lettuces. And you don't run out because you just pick from the edges and pick from the edges. And where I live used to be an old motel complex, so there's a lot of people that own the units there. And I've got about 4 families that feed themselves off the lettuce and the parsley in my garden, and also off the like capsicums, but they're small ones, sweet ones, lunchbox ones, couple of bushes of those, and they don't stop. And there's always silver beet and spinach, and I've got butternuts growing. You don't need a lot of space. You can start with 1 bucket. Drill some holes, 5 or 6 holes in the bottom, chuck a bit of dirt in it, and just start with that. Start small.
Very cool. And we've got a follow-up comment from Candace saying, just letting you know, Dawson School is still going with garden to table. Fruit trees are producing lots of fruit. Garden beds are full with flowers and veggie. Thank you for all your mahi you put in.
Oh, great. I know Renee's doing a fantastic job there. And yeah, absolutely.
And we do have a couple of questions now. So,
Cool.
do you garden by lunar cycle? How does this work with school program?
Okay, working with the maramataka, there's actually Adrian Sutherland on Facebook has a really good guideline booklet, but also you'll notice the maramataka differs from area to area because, I mean, our climate differs from area to area. I do look at it. There are some days where the maramataka will say, yeah, it's a rubbish day for doing any planting. They'll say, do any cleaning up or weeding or anything like that. The lunar cycle doesn't mean you've got to be out there in the moonlight planting, but you follow them. And I prefer to follow the maramataka for my planting, but also for my children. I usually print off the Yates gardening calendar for the month. I print off the Tui gardening calendar for the month. You can also get one from Palmer's and one from King's. We have a look at that, and we have a look at what the maramataka says. So they might all say, hey, this is really good to plant in this month, but the maramataka will say, but do it on these days. Don't do it on these days. Give those days a skip and then go back. I mean, the maramataka, the lunar candle, the calendar, the way it works, obviously, is that the moon dictates our water cycles on the earth, and the pull and sway of the moon. You'll find the days that are better for the planting are the days when the lunar cycle means the water is being pulled to the surface a bit more because the impact. That's how I was taught it. That's how I believe it.
Rawe. And a final question, best crops for bucket gardens.
Oh, best crops for bucket gardens. First off, perpetual spinach, silver beet. I've done tomatoes well, but potatoes are amazing. A bucket garden with potatoes, get your holes in the bottom and put yourself in for an ordinary household bucket, put yourself in about 4 potatoes with their eyes, and just gradually fill that up, and you'll get an entire bucket full of potatoes out of that. They're absolutely unreal. And parsley, my first is perpetual because I love spinach, and silver beet and potatoes and parsley, and also basil. If you like, I'm allergic to nuts, so I don't use pine nuts, but I make my pesto with toasted sunflower seeds and basil, which is yum.
All right, and we will squeeze one more quick question in.
Okay.
Would you know the best place to source Māori potatoes for school to grow? Ngā mihi for your webinar.
Oh, thank you for that. Kia ora. Okay, well, for me, I get mine from up north. I get mine from up north, from one of the marae that I go to up there, up Whirinaki. But also there is a they advertise constantly.
Not Not
Begins with A.
oh,
It begins-
but not is it called Kohanga Gardens or something?
Yeah, anything from Kohanga is great.
Yeah.
Kohanga nurseries. Kohanga nurseries, they are really, really good. When I did the gardens at the historical village, we used to source almost all of our stuff from Kay at Kohanga nurseries. But I'll see if I can find the name of this. Drop me a line and I'll answer. Send me an email, I'll answer back. It might take a little while with the technology down here in the valley. I mean, I'm looking out here now and I'm just surrounded by hills and trees and I'm on my own.
Oh boy. So I know I'd love to hear the answer to that as well, Tepora. So I'd be more than happy to add it as a comment to the YouTube video when it gets posted as well.
That would be great.
And so I will I hopefully this feedback has flashed up for more than long enough. We as usual love your feedback. We'd love to know where to go to next with our webinars, but again, Tepora, ngā mihi nui kia koe mō o kapu tēnei ahi. Tēnā rawa atu e hoa. It's been inspiring.
Kia ora, Ruth.
And we have another May webinar. This was originally going to be our April webinar. That is on AI and authentic assessment. So that's coming up on Wednesday, 28th of May. And to close, as we started, with a karakia. Be karakia tātou. Kia mātou katoa, kua mutu mātou ia mātou mahi, ia mātou kaupapa hoki. Arahina mātou, kia kawe mātou ia mātou haipapa. Kia whakatapua mātou ki ngā kaupapa me ngā mea e whakapono. Manaaki tia mai mātou.